Hi everybody, so today I'm going to talk to you about my project. I called it Overconsumption, Ignorance, and Abuse, an in-depth analysis of the garment industry in Bangladesh and its economic, sociological, and psychological consequences. So here's my thesis statement. The Western philosophy more is better, which encourages mass production and overconsumption, leads to the continuation of garment factories in Bangladesh as the demand coming from consumer is enormous. It induces sociological, economic, and psychological consequences, such as the abusing work condition that garment workers experience and its negative impact on their physical and mental health, an unfair share of wealth between Western countries and Bangladesh, as well as environmental problems. And my research question is how does the Western philosophy more is better actively encourages the existence of garment factories in Bangladesh, and what are the sociological, economic, and psychological consequences? For the history, I'll give a brief one. I'll talk about the most major accident that happened in garment factories. In 2013, Rana Plaza, which was one of the garment factories in Bangladesh, collapsed and it killed more than 1,000 garment workers. So after it happened, it was televised, and institutions were kind of pressured to promise better work condition, and they did, but the work condition never really got better. It means that garment workers still have an awful working condition. It looks like many companies look at that fatal accident as a brief public relation disaster instead of something tragic and serious. Buyers of like H&M, Gap, Shein, Temu, Forever 21 are encouraging these work conditions by purchasing clothing from these companies. It is a social issue extremely difficult to solve as it lies under so many other social problems in our society, such as poverty, racism, and sexism. It's good to know why is it still happening. So there was a major economic growth in Bangladesh coming from the garment industry. Bangladesh is still a very poor country, but their conditions are getting more promising. Producing clothes in these factories also costs almost nothing, so big companies like H&M and M and Forever 21 are going to produce there. It allows them to produce at a low cost, to sell at a low cost, and also to sell more. So it becomes clear that our society prioritizes money and profit over giving basic human rights to everyone. Another reason is that it's still happening is because of the ignorance of the consumer. So many are unaware of the negative impacts their action have on garment workers. So the real question is why is it a problem? So first there's overconsumption. The line between needs and wants is proven to be unclear from the consumer perspective. So in our society, more is better is leading to overconsumption. People never feel like they have enough. And also it's proven that consumers do not seem to find a way out of this cycle. So if they start buying a lot, they can stop. Garment workers also experience regular sexual, mental, and physical abuse and other psychological problems caused by the work environment. Garment factories also have a lot of negative environmental impact. It is proven to be one of the big contributors to climate change. Finally, garment factories also engage in child labor. There are more than millions of children that work for them. So the three disciplines I decided to work with, like I mentioned earlier in my thesis statement and my research question, are economy, psychology, and sociology. So let's start with the economy. The most important reason why these factories are still in place is the economy. The bad work condition of these workers, they allow big brands such as H&M and Gap to produce at very much a low cost. They can create a bunch of micro season, which means that there's new clothes every week in the store, and it pushes people to buy more. The social issue is a battle between the rich and the poor, basically. Even if Bangladesh has a better economy than before, more than half of the population can be considered vulnerable to poverty. To give an idea, Bangladesh minimum wage is $3 a day, while the World Bank's consider a country in extreme poverty when the minimum wage is $1.90. On a positive note, Bangladesh GDP is growing by around 6% each year. The garment industry is also the main export earner in Bangladesh, so it's easy to understand that the country relies economically on the industry a lot. That's why around 4 to 5 million Bangladeshi work in these factories. When it comes to sociology, there are many environmental issues. Like I mentioned earlier, garment factories are a big contributor to climate change. The use of wool leads to gas emission, deforestation, water pollution, and wildfire. There is an argument that garment factories is in part a feminist act, as it gives women sustainable jobs. It is debatable when the job you have give you PTSD and your boss actually assaults you often. Some feminist scholars argue that these are good job in context, but really the only reason why government gave women jobs in factories is to gain profit and not because they suddenly became some sort of feminist. Social media also plays its part as it can reinforce positive changes, and even if they're small to the industry. Rana Plaza was televised everywhere in the world, and a call for action was made. Small changes were made, so it worked. It is also proven that when workers have more media freedom, they also tend to gain better work condition. Social status and privilege is still important. It is proven that consumers do not recognize the power they have over garment workers and underestimate the change they could do. So even if social media is a good tool to spread awareness, many would not do it as they do not feel like they are part of the problem. Finally, garment workers work in awful condition. They work overtime, 7 days a week. They work away from their family. They do not have doctors or psychologists to help them. They breathe and touch toxic materials all day. They're not even paid enough to make a living. They experience regular verbal, physical, and sexual abuse, and they also hurt themselves with the machines, leading them to lose fingers, for example. The garment workers in Bangladesh are suffering from many mental and physical problems due to their work condition. Men and women reported struggling with mental health due to low wages, separation from their families, and their working condition. Female garment workers tend to report worse mental health condition than males. They also reported wanting to die. There is a difference in treatment in EPZ and non-EPZ factories. For those who don't know, EPZ factories are the one exporting products, and non-EPZ tend to produce for locals. It is because of Rana Plaza that EPZ factories receive better treatment because big companies such as H&M and Gap pressured the supervisors to give the workers better work condition. Still, supervisors do not take care of their employees. They have no doctors and their bosses are simply focused on production. One supervisor said, "We do not have time to listen to the complaints of the workers, showing a lack of care and empathy." Garment workers also usually show a bunch of signs of anxiety, depression, and PTSD. My theory is called Romantic Ethics. It was made by Colin Campbell in 1987. It encourages people to find pleasure in the pursuit of material objects. Consumers tend to seek authenticity, a sense of uniqueness through their style. It is embraced by so many that cannot afford good quality products as they are too expensive, so they instead buy from garment factories. Fast fashion can be described as a tool to help middle class consumers to pretend to live a luxury lifestyle. It is all about performance instead of actually being, and social media just makes it worse every day. So here is some argument for because they do exist. Producing clothes in garment factories allow big companies to sell more, so that's good for them. It also gives sustainable jobs to women. One study, which contradicts many others, showed that garment workers tend to report low manifestation of depression and anxiety symptoms when they self report. Finally, garment factories made Bangladesh economy better. The arguments against are the climate change, obviously, the overconsumption of consumers, the physical, mental, and sexual abuse garment workers experience in their factories, and also the awful work condition that step over human rights. For my solution, I would say that spreading awareness to consumers about where their clothes come from is important. Many are ignorant, and if they knew what garment workers go through, they might change their mind. Not allowing access to phone apps where you can buy clothes such as Temu and Shein would help. It would create less demand. And finally, buying secondhand is the best move you can do. You can still have new clothes without asking for demand. Best of both worlds, dare I say. In conclusion, I want you guys to understand that demands are extremely high. People buy an enormous amount of clothes that they barely wear. It's not a good move. Human rights are under attack. Garment workers are being beat up, raped, and verbally abused just for us to have a cute top. It's important to be mindful of what we buy and from which company we buy. It is important to take responsibility. Thank you for listening, and here are my references.